In today's video, I'm going to show you why the 6, 10, and 20 visit package model is broken, and I'm going to show you guys how to fix it without sacrificing patient results. So, hi, my name is Dr. Robert Wolkers. I'm one of the co-owners here at Rehab CEOs. I previously had 3 locations in Northern Virginia before selling my shares back to my partner, and now we run an 8-figure agency helping physical therapy practices grow and scale. So, a little while back, I was talking to a cash pay practice owner, and they were selling packages, which was awesome. However, every single time we would look at their kind of like a monthly scorecard to feel, what's their revenue at, where's their expenses, what's their visit volume, what's their evals. They had a lot of evals coming in. They were selling packages, but when it came down to their profitability, it was almost non-existent, and they were really confused, and so were we. So we started to dive in deep a little bit, and we asked them point blank, we said, why do you think this is happening? And they said, well, we typically sell packages, we collect the money up front, but then we also have to understand that we have to fulfill on those visits. So if they sell a 20 visit package, they collect the money up front, but then they have to go about 1 to 2 months of seeing that patient in the visits before they're able to go and possibly sell another visit package. Now, a lot of these guys sell shorter package sessions, which is like the majority were about 6 visits. They sold some 10 visits and they sold some 20 visit packages. But what was really interesting is when we started to look at the data, what was happening is that the more visit volume they sold, the less money they were making on a profit standpoint. So what do I mean by that is this clinic had 6, 10, and 20 visit package options, right? It was super easy to put into their EMR. And that way they, either they sold a 6 visit, they sold a 10 visit, or they sold a 20 visit package. Now, the cool part about this is that all of their show price was around $200. And I'll just do routine visits because, we already sold the eval and now we're just trying to sell a package for them to continue with the plan of care. So they were at 200 across the board. This is what we would call their show price. However, what they would do is they would say, if you buy, 6 sessions, then I will be able to go ahead and discount that down to about $180. If you go ahead and buy 10 sessions, we could go ahead and mark that down to like $160. And then if you buy 20 visits, we are going to go ahead and discount that down to about $140 or so. Okay. So here's somebody that the more you buy, the less you have to pay, which kind of makes sense. It's like, hey, you commit to a 20 visit package model, then we're going to go ahead and give you a discounted price. So what was happening in this case is that the more they sold, the less they were making, right? So if we kind of look at the total here, I'll get my calculator because I'm not trying to give you guys wrong numbers. And then if we go 6 times 180, so here was the total package price of $1,080. Okay. So if they have 10 visits and we were selling it for $160, it'd be roughly around $1,600 is what the total package price would be. And then if we had 20 times that by 140, they were at $2,800. Cool. Right. So if they actually sold 20 visits at 140, they were collecting $2,800 at the time of service, which sounds really cool because you are able to sell the package. The patient's bought in, right? The therapist is happy. The clinic is able to get paid. And you're like, this was great. We sold a $2,800 package. However, when you start to look at what's actually happened, you start to realize that the more visits that were being sold, the less money that the clinic was making. So what do I mean by that? Okay. So this is what's known as your revenue per visit, right? Your revenue divided by visits. So if you're at 180, 160, 140, that's how much revenue you're making off of these sessions. Now, why this is really important, because there's something else that's in play here that most clinic owners don't take in consideration. Now, if you're a newer clinic, right, you just started maybe within the last year, you might not know this number because it's going to take a little bit of time to figure it out. But if you've been in business for at least 6 months or greater, you should have no issues figuring out what I'm about to show you next. Okay. So what is this number that we look at? It's known as your cost per visit. And your cost per visit is essentially your total expenses. And just for clarification purposes, this is your total operating expenses, right? Your fixed, your variable, this is your rent. This is going to be your utilities. This is going to be how much are you paying payroll, It could be your marketing budget, whatever. It's what you need to be able to operate your business, either from a fixed standpoint or variable. Okay. So that's what we need to figure out is what is our total operating expenses. And then we simply just divide that number by visits. Okay. So what is your total visits? Now, one thing I want to just make sure I coach you guys on is that do a 6-month average, because what happens is like some months are high, some months are low, some months are high, or you turn off ad spend, you turn them back on, right? So I want you guys to make sure when you're figuring out your cost per visit, you are figuring it out over a 6-month run rate, because that'll give you a really good indicator, a really good number for what your actual cost per visit is. Now, something that we love to do here at Rehab CEOs is we love to set clinics up based on your cost per visit number. So let's just say in this example that we showed you above, where the clinics were showing a price of $200, but then if they bought a 6-pack, 10 or 20, it was $180, it was $160, and went all the way down to $140. Now, if your show price is $200, and let's say we're trying to make a 35% profit margin. So if you take $200, you multiply that by 0.65, right? What is the total operating expenses that we could afford to be able to churn a 35% margin? So you do 200, you times that by 0.65, right? Which is just 100 minus 35 equals 65%. And then that is going to give us $130, which is going to be known as our cost per visit. Okay. So what we just calculated there is that 35%. So when we're looking at this thing, 35% off of 200 is going to be $130 cost per visit. So what we just figured out is that it's going to cost us roughly $130 to be able to provide a session for a patient. Now, for you guys, if you figure out your actual cost per visit, because this was like just targeted, it might even be a little bit higher than that. It might be a little bit lower. Now, insurance guys, you're sitting there and you're like, well, our revenue per visit is 110. And if you want to make 35% margin, right, your cost per visit target would then be 110 times 0.65, right? It might be $71. So I've been doing this a long time, and I could tell you that you will always spend the money that you think you have. So we see clinics at 140 RPV, and they're at like 110, 120 cost per visit. We see people down at like $90 revenue per visit, and they're down around like $70 or $80 cost per visit. So it's like you will always spend the money you think you have. And I could say that because people who make, 140 a session, they're like, oh, I'm going to pay my PTs more money, which is fine, which is great. But it's just the margin will always be between 20 and 35% for most clinics. Now, most clinics don't operate efficiently. So yes, they're set up to do 25 to 35% margins, but because they only have like a 70 or 80% efficiency, now we're only in the 10 to 15 to 20% margin if you're lucky to do that. So let's go back to this example. So if you're looking at this thing, and this is going to be your revenue per visit after the discount, and your cost per visit is 130. Well, I don't know about you guys, but look at this. You're only making roughly around $10 per session the more that you buy. So what was happening is this clinic was selling these packages for like 20 visits or 10 visits or whatever it was. And because of that, the more they sold and the more they discounted, they were getting really, really close to their cost per fulfillment, right? Their cost per visit. So we see this a lot. So right now, if you're watching this video, you could do two things. Number one is write out exactly how you guys are currently presenting your package pricing. So if you do 6, if you do 10, if you do 20, that's fine. But then also, what is your pricing that you have it marked to? Is it down to 180, 160, 140? Is it 160, 140, 120? Is it 180, 140, 100, right? And then what I want you to do next is figure out your cost per visit. So you take your total expenses, divide it by your visits, you pull your total expenses over the last 6 months, you divide it by your total visit count over the last 6 months, and that tells us what your cost per visit is. Now, if you guys are doing 6 and 20 visit models, I want to give you maybe an option that you could switch to. You'll love it, your therapist will love it, and your patients will love it even more. Now, the last thing I will just say about 6, 10, and 20s is a lot of times what happens is most providers, for whatever reason, because this is the cheapest, they usually default to like, well, let's sell a 6-pack and then let's see how you do. And then you try to do another sale. So if we look at the phases of rehab, right, we have getting somebody out of pain is going to be number 1 phase, right? Range of motion, pain, flexibility, functionality, right? We're going to get rid of the pain first. Then we want to move them into this phase called priming, right? Which is going to be more strength, mobility, flexibility. The reason why I mention this is if it's weak, we make it stronger. If it's not moving, we make it more mobile. If it's tight, we make it more flexible, right? So we're kind of priming the body. We don't want to strengthen dysfunction, but this is also where you fix the root cause of the issue, because we get somebody out of pain first and now we can get to work. And then the next part about this is going to be performance, right? What is the outcome that this person is trying to accomplish, right? They want to get back to running. They're training for a marathon. They want to get back to work or sport, whatever it is, right? We get them to a performance level. And then finally, we want to make sure that the goal is that it doesn't return unless there's a new injury. Okay. So we have pain, we have priming, we have performance, and we have prevention. Now, the cool part about this is people highly value getting out of pain. They love it, right? It's like, if I can get you out of pain, right, that would be amazing. Patients love it. The therapists get fired up over it. It's just like everybody's excited. Most physical therapists could probably get a patient out of pain if it's acute, subacute, or if physical therapy will actually work for them on the pain front. They usually could reduce pain in the first 6 visits or less, right? So when you look at actual like data when it comes to functional outcome measures or whatever, most physical therapists are trained pain specialists. They could get people out of pain or reduce their pain significantly in the first 6 sessions. So because of that, when you sell a 6-pack, right, we're usually able to solve the first problem, which is getting someone out of pain. Now, the other cool part about this, if we skip over a level and we go to performance, most patients, right, they love when they're able to return to whatever they were previously not able to return to, right? So maybe it's a runner who's having pain when running, and that's preventing them from running the distance that they want. You know, runners don't stop running, but they stop running the distance that they want. Maybe you have somebody who's not able to work and now they're able to get back to work, or someone's not able to play a sport or go on that vacation or whatever it is because they were in pain, they weren't able to do their activities, and now we're getting them back. But most importantly, when you get someone back to performance, you are getting them back to the identity that they were in before, right? So people had an identity, a father, a coach, a team member, a worker, a mom, whatever it is, and then they had pain, and now their identity is affected. So we need to be able to build them back up to performance, sure, but we need to get them back to the person that they were before they were in pain. Because people in pain, they're miserable. They're irritated, they're agitated, you know, they're kind of miserable. I know from speaking to when I have pain, right? I don't show up the way I need to show up for the people that I care about, okay? So when we're looking at this thing, people highly value pain and people highly value performance. However, the problem is this is where we actually have to put in some work here, right? So the priming phase, this is all about strength, mobility, and flexibility, right? So you don't just go to the gym and just come out looking like Arnold. You actually have to put in the work, right? Most muscles, right, when you're building strength or endurance or whatever, it takes about, 5 to 8 weeks, right? 5 to 10 weeks, 5 to 12 weeks in order to start to build muscle strength and to be able to build endurance and so on and so forth. So we need to understand that people during this phase, the value starts to be affected a little bit. And the reason for that is because this is where we have time, energy, and sacrifice needed to be able to push through to reach the goals. So this is where your clinic needs to be fun, enjoyable, your experience is through the roof, you have good people. People actually want to show up for PT because we are trying to get them from the pain to performance phase, but we just also have to know that this is the hardest part, right? So why do I tell you guys this? Because if we're selling a 6-visit package, we usually can get people out of the pain phase first. Now, what happens here is once you get them out of pain, most people don't want to buy another package. Why is that? Well, because it's like, I came here to get out of pain. You got me out of pain. I don't need to come anymore. I don't see the value of continuing. So we have to have like this weird, hard conversation. And you're like, well, no, I know you're out of pain, but there's still more. And they're like, I don't agree with that. I feel great, so I'm done. So most of the time, people don't buy another package because they already got the goal, the first goal, which was to get them out of pain. Now, if we're able to sell like a 10-pack, well, now we kind of get them to this middle of the priming level, and they're getting better, but not yet back to performance. So they're feeling a little stuck, right? And they're like, it was really good, but, and then if you're able to sell a 20-visit package, now we're able to get them to performance. People love you. They rave about you. But what we see for 20-visit packages is most people, if they're not pre-framed past the point like, hey, I'm going to get you out of pain. However, you're going to feel good and you're going to want to stop coming. That's not what we want to do here, because we have to go ahead and fix the root cause of the issue so that we can get you back to running or work or whatever it is. So you're going to feel great, and then we'll be able to get you back to your main goal, which is insert whatever that looks like. Okay. So that's why we usually see with these 6, 10, and 20 visit packages is that most people start to get stuck here. Now, before I move on, I want to let you guys know that usually what happens here is there's a lot of pressure on therapists during these first 6 sessions, right? Because you feel like you need to provide all of this value and go over the top and work with patients for an hour or an hour, 90 minutes, whatever that looks like. And there's a lot of therapists out there. There's a lot of pressure that we're putting on therapists to be able to produce in the first 6 sessions so that I provide so much value that they'll want to re-up again. And then when they don't re-up, maybe I did something wrong, right? So there's all this pressure. Also, based on literature and what, how muscles and tissues and tendons and ligaments and all this stuff recovers, most of the stuff doesn't really recover in 6 visits. So what do people do is they take those 6 visits and they spread it out. They spread it out over a period of time. And they're like, we'll do 1 session a week for every other week or 1 session a week for 6 weeks. And that's how they try to make it work. Now, the problem is that most patients actually don't believe that they can get better in only 1 visit a week or once every other week scheduling. Okay, so what do we do here? So this is actually really cool. So the thing that I want to introduce to you guys today is something called custom plan of cares. Okay, custom POCs. They are awesome. They are great. Okay, so the cool part about a custom plan of care is we are going to be selling the transformation, right? We are going to be selling the future and not the features. Really, really important here. Now, it's always funny. People are like, I want to help therapists, and we do things one-on-one and it's individualized and custom as long as it's a 6, 10, or 20 pack, right? It doesn't really make sense. So we actually need to understand that there's going to be different diagnoses coming through your clinic and working with your providers. And if it's truly custom, then we have to be able to accordion this thing, right? We have to be able to understand that, like, oh, vertigo might only need 4 visits. Oh, ACL reconstruction might need 24 to 36 sessions. Oh, they just had a stroke, might need to see them for like 48 sessions over the next year, right? So it's just like, what do we need to be able to prescribe with this patient that's sitting in front of me? Like a knee could be only 6 sessions all the way up to 36 sessions, depending on what type of knee injury it is. So in order for us to do that, we need to create this thing called custom plan of cares. Okay. So when you're working with a patient and you're doing an evaluation, you're basically going to figure out, okay, they have some sort of problem, right? They have some sort of problem that they're coming to PT for. This is also going to be known as the pain phase. Like, what is the problem? What kind of pain are they in? Then what's going to happen, right? We're going to build this kind of plan of care, and we need to figure out what is their dream outcome, right? What is the dream outcome here? If you come to physical therapy, what do we need to accomplish in order to make this thing work for you, right? I want to make sure you come to PT and we do the sessions, but ultimately, where's the finish line? What does this look like? I can't run. I can't wait to get back to running. Okay, well, is that the short-term or long-term goal? Well, no, the long-term goal is I actually signed up for the Boston Marathon. Great. Okay, so this is a runner coming in who wants to return to training. We have a father who, hey, I got hurt at work. I can't work right now. I can't provide for my family. I need to be able to get back to work at full capacity and be able to do this, this, and this. Okay, so now we're stretching the gap here and figuring out where are they at and where are they trying to get to. Now I could figure out what's the pain phase, what's the priming phase, and what does performance look like, and then possible prevention, right? So now I can get them all the way up to the 4 phases of rehab. Now I need to be able to figure out, okay, where are they at, which is going to be known as the, right? So that we got to figure out how many times a week they need to be coming in for. Then I need to figure out what is going to be the total duration to be able to take them from problem phase all the way to that dream outcome. Then we're going to multiply that by the revenue per visit. And then now we have created a total package price. Okay, so now I get them down for a total package price. So we basically figured out what is the frequency that they need. Okay, what's the frequency? What's the duration? We're going to multiply that by a revenue per visit, and that's going to give us a total package price, also known as a custom plan of care. So when we're looking at this thing, let's say we do have one of those vertigo patients coming through. Well, they might only need like 2 times a week for 2 weeks. Okay. We might have someone that comes into the clinic. They might be 3 times a week for 4 weeks. We might have someone come in that might be 3 times a week for 4 weeks. And then we're going to drop them down to 2 times a week for another 4 weeks. And then 1 time a week for another 4 weeks. And now when we're looking at that, they have 12 sessions. They have 8 sessions. They have 4 sessions for a total of 24. This is what we're referring to is people are going to come in with pain. They're going to have some level of performance that they want to get back to. And now we got to figure out, do they need 6 visits? Do they need 8? Do they need 14? Do they need 20? Do they need 36? It doesn't matter because you are going to create a custom plan of care for them. Okay. You're going to create a custom plan that is tailored just to them. So then what we do here is, let's say you do charge $200 a session. Well, you have 2 times 2, that's 4 visits. Times that by 200, right? $800 is going to be your show price for the package. We have 3 sessions here. We have a duration of 4. That's going to be 12. 12 times 200 is going to be $2,400, right? We have 24 sessions down here. We're going to multiply that by 200. And now you're at $4,800 total package pricing. So you are just going to figure out what's the frequency, what's the duration, and then multiply that by your revenue per visit. Okay. But it doesn't stop there because remember, we want to be able to give them a custom plan that they actually believe is going to work for them. Then the next thing that we want to do is not only give them a plan that will work for them, we want to make sure that it will work for them from an affordability standpoint, make sure it fits into their schedule, make sure that they have the support at home. And then that way they could come in for their sessions and get the results that they desire. So the cool part about this now is once we actually create the custom plan of care, right? That we just talked about, the custom package, we have actually 3, let's just call it 4 options that they have. So they have 4 payment options because we're going to say, hey, if we could help you make this work financially, would you like to move forward? Yes. Great. Option number 1 is going to be you prepay, right? We call it a PIF, prepay in full. So if you go ahead and pay the full price, I could then go ahead and give you a 20% off discount. Okay, so that's going to be number 1. So they're either going to prepay in full and I can give you a 20% off discount. It's $1,000, but if you go ahead and sign up today, it's only going to be $800. That's what that's referring to. Okay, so now how we would sell this to the patient is we would say, great, your total package price is, however, if you go ahead and sign up today, we could give you a 20% off discount, which will be roughly X amount of money off for a total package price of, does that sound fair? Now, they might say, well, I don't, okay, no worries. Well, what we can do is we could pay half upfront today. We could pay half later, and I'll go ahead and give you 10% off both what you pay today and what we set up for later. And when I say later, most people will set up actually like a payment plan. So like every 30 days for X amount of months, they would pay the remainder. So what would this look like? Let's say the total package price is $2,000. You'll go ahead and pay $1,000 today, $1,000 later. I could give you 10% off of each. So it'll be $900 today is what's owed. $900 is remaining. We'll divide that by 3 months. So you'll have 3 payments left of $300. How does that sound? Does that sound fair? Great. So we prepay in full 20%. So we're incentivizing them for committing upfront. We're also going to do pay half upfront, and then we could do monthly payments with a 10% off discount. Now, if they're still like, well, I don't really know. Great. Well, what can you do? Now, most people will hear monthly and they'll hear 20% off. So they'll say like, well, could I do monthly payments at 20% off or monthly payments at 10%? And I'll just say, well, if we do monthly, we could do 10% off, right? Because I want to keep this here and incentivize them for pay in full. And then most people will do a pay, right, session to session, right? So we'll just call this session to session, where they just want to pay, let's say we're charging $200 a session. I give them 10% off. So they're paying $180 every time that they come in. And those are the 4 options. So just to recap, it's either going to be prepay in full, 20% off. It's going to be prepay half later, 10% off. It's going to be month to month at about 10% off, or it's going to be session to session at 10% off. Okay. But they are going to agree that in order to get the results that they desired, that they need to be able to come in for whatever the amount of session duration is. Okay. So we want to make sure that we are giving them the exact session count that they need to be able to reach their goals. Now, why this is really important here is because we set pricing up based on that cost per visit. So if we know our cost per visit is $130, okay, and we want to be able to figure out what is the revenue per visit that we need. So 130 divided by 0.65 would mean we need to be able to make $200 a session to have a 35% margin. And then what we want to do from there is we take $200 and divide it by 0.8. And then this is going to be what's known as our show price, which is $250. Okay. And what do we do here? We know that our current cost per visit is $130. So we want to be able to do a 35% margin here. So we would need to be at $200. 130 is 65% of 200. And then what we do here is we need to mark this up 20%, because remember, we're going to do a prepay in full and we're going to be able to do a 20% off discount. Well, I don't want to discount off 200. I want to be able to discount off the markup because I need to make 200. So we have to mark it up. So what do we do here is we take 200 divided by 0.8 and it marks up to 250. So let's see how this works in action. Say a patient comes in, frequency times duration times your revenue per visit, also known as your show price, equals your custom POC. So frequency, let's say they're going to come in for 3 times a week. Duration is going to be for 6 weeks. And then our show price is going to be $250. So how this is going to work is they are going to take 3 times 6 times $250 for a total package price of $4,500. Okay. So when you're working with a patient, you would say, hey, in order for us to be able to take you from where you're at right now, which is, and be able to get all the way to, it's going to take 18 sessions. We typically charge $250 a session. So the total package price is going to be $4,500. Okay. So it's going to be $4,500. However, if you go ahead and sign up today, I could give you a 20% off discount to that. So the price will only be, right? So now you take the $4,500, you give them a 20% off. So it'll be $3,600 for today, minus that by $4,500, and I'll be able to give you $900 off the total price. How does that sound? Now, what do we do this there? We did a price anchor in sales. We give them a 20% off this because people want to know, what am I comparing this to? We're comparing it to $4,500, and we're going to go ahead and mark it down to a 20% off discount. It's only going to be $3,600. So therefore, I take the $3,600 is what we're going to prepay in full. They get a $900 discount. But watch this. This is really, really cool. Okay. If we take $3,600 divided by 18 visits, it's $200 a session, which, by the way, 130 is our cost per visit. And now we're able to make the margin that we need to be able to pay our providers and to be able to pay all of our fixed and variable expenses, so we could give patients a good experience and not feel stressed all the time because we're not making money. Okay. And this could work for any session duration, whatever that looks like. Okay. Now, if the patient then balks for whatever reason, and they say, well, I can't do the $3,600. You would say, hey, no worries. Well, what we can do is we could take the $4,500, right? We could do half today, and we could do half. We could kind of spread it out, right? So it would take the $4,500. I think it's going to be $2,750, but let me just do the math on that. Nope, it's going to be $2,250. Okay, $2,250. And what I can do here is I could give a 10% off discount. So today you would owe $2,025. Okay, and then we could take $2,025 here. Looking at your duration of 6 weeks, that's 2 months roughly. Let's just say 3 months. So we'll take the $2,025 divided by 3, which will be $675. So here's what we're going to do. We could do $2,025 today. I could go ahead and knock $225 off of the price. And then what we can do is we're going to do $675 for 3 months, starting 30 days from now. How does that sound? Starting 30 days from now. So how does that sound? Okay, so that's option number 2. Now, for whatever reason, they might balk at that and say, well, no worries. We'll do $4,500. We'll do a payment plan for about 4 months here. So we take I'm just using my calculator. So we got $4,500 divided by 4, which is going to be $1,125. Okay. I can go ahead and throw in a 10% discount off of that. So you would just owe $1,002 today. And your next payment will be, you'll have 3 remaining payments of this starting 30 days from now. How does that sound? Okay. Or option number 4 is you would owe, right? So we got $250. So $250 is our show price, times that by a 20 or 10% off discount. And they would owe $225 each time they come in for $25 off. Okay. That's how that would work. Now, for whatever reason, if your cost per visit's lower, then you would just work the math off of that number, right? So if you're an insurance clinic, or if you happen to be, an out-of-network or hybrid, you would just figure out your cost per visit and then figure out your cash prices off of that visit. But I'm here to tell you, as we look to wrap up this video, most of our clinics here are at about $250 for an evaluation. So at 20% off, it would land at $200. And then most of our clinics are at $200 for their show price for a routine visit, and they land at roughly $160. Right? So as long as you're over $140 a session for your cash prices is good. You always want to make sure your cash prices are always higher than what you guys charge for your out-of-network or in-network pricing, because we use our cash prices as a price anchor. Cool. So hopefully this was helpful for you guys. If you want to learn more of this content or even get a calculator that we put together for you guys, go ahead and just comment below or click the link in the bio to be able to sign up for our workshop that we have coming up, because the workshop will be able to give you more information on this, as well as how to actually put together and sell these packages. So make sure you guys are clicking the link inside of the description or in the comment section below, and I'll see you guys on that workshop. So if you want to learn more about this information or how to actually sell these packages and actually get a tool that we put together to make the math easier, go ahead and click on the link in the description below or in the comment section to be able to sign up for our workshop that we have coming up. That workshop is going to cover everything when it comes to selling these custom plan of cares, but also putting them together in a way that people are excited to not only just attend their session, but also pay you for them. So I'll see you guys on the next workshop.